Welcome to the SEO Insider with your host, Seth Price, founder of BluShark, taking you inside the world of legal marketing and all things digital.
Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to be here today with Kristi of the Kristi Jane Agency. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kristi has been in the industry for decades, behind the scenes, doing all sorts of amazing work, which we're about to hear about. And then more recently has pivoted to a much more forward-facing both agency as well as really exciting venture in the legal space, which is near and dear to my heart since I dance between the SEO world and the legal world. So Kristi, tell us, how did you get to here? Because I've seen your name for years, but never gotten to spend any time with you until recently.
So I kind of landed in the perfect position really young. I was a research analyst and trainer, writer, and everything over at Search Engine News. My job was to watch exactly what the search engines did, explain it to somebody in a simple to understand way, and then teach people how to make money with it. And the people that I was teaching were anyone from business owners, just enough to know whether or not they're getting ripped off by the marketing agency or not, and also agency owners and, just single SEO people, so they could get ahead of their competition. So I started out really behind the scenes crunching data, which is my joy in so many ways. And then I spent a lot of years just doing training classes and things like that. A couple of years ago, I got kind of pushed forward, decided I was tired of helping people understand their marketing, and I wanted to really get in there and sink my teeth into it and do it myself. So, and also it was kind of serendipitous because I started working with Patrick Anderson and with Pilma and those guys over there. And I was realizing how the legal industry was so underserved by marketers in general. And there's some really good agencies out there, but there was a lot of opportunity. So I launched Kristi Jane, and I've been just running ever since.
Cool. Let's take you back a little bit. So when you first started out, who were the, besides, your own stuff, which of the different online periodicals did you love? Where were you? What was much must read or must watch for you?
That's hard because, I'm 20 years in, shockingly. And my RSS feed of everything that I would read like more than 1,000 pieces of content a month in order to publish my content for my readers for Search Engine News. We published once a month. It was an online trade magazine, but it's like all the big guys. But really what like Search Engine Journal and, everybody in those kind of spaces. But also what I realized is you find more valuable real world information from tiny little spots where somebody is just making they're competitive in a really tight industry, and just watching what they're doing. And that's really what I specialized in when we did our training courses. We did training courses, online training courses for more than 10 years before I left Planet Ocean. And I was really good at finding people who were in the industry, any industry, and were making money doing something that related to marketing, any of it. And then saying, hey, I really want you to teach this class. And they're like, I'm not a teacher. And I'm like, it's okay, I'll help you. And so that was really what I did behind the scenes, is take people who were making money online and get them to show me what they were doing. And that's how my team was kind of formed, is I'd been working with people who were making money and being very successful. And I was like, hey, you guys want to start an agency with me?
Well, and that's sort of interesting because, I've been through the process. I probably started mine about 8 years ago. Similarly, I was speaking because it was too cheap to pay for conferences. And then, hey, I might as well have a widget to sell.
Right.
And I had the greatest sort of opening, which is I had done it for myself. Let me help you do it for you.
Right.
But it was really fascinating because it felt like it was for me, a snapshot to a moment back when you had, a handful of clients. It's, there are things that get along, and as you start to scale, it's fascinating. Curious, because you're at that inflection point where you're going from knowing every client really well to, man, I need other people touching this, to can I be forward facing to the client as well as doing quality control, as well as being the innovator in research and development. Right. It's talk to me about that process, because for, it's right now, I'm at the point where my issues are like mid-level manager issues, and right. It's not just like I have department heads. That's one thing, but which is sort of where you're probably getting to right now. But then it's like, okay, well, each department head can only have so many direct reports, and making sure that you have quality control seeping down. So talk to me about the place you are in life, at least agency wise right now. And I think that'll be very sort of interesting for a lot of our audience members who are trying to build their own agencies.
So with my agency, I've taken a very maybe unpopular approach, because when I first launched, everyone is like, how big will you get? How fast? Because I had a reputation already for no nonsense, really digging in, never vouching for a strategy that I couldn't prove with data worked. And I had an audience who were used to reading what I was writing and listening to my podcast and doing all of the stuff. So I left a pretty hungry audience behind. And so they thought I was just going to blaze a trail and, create this giant agency overnight. And I was very reluctant to do that, because what I had seen for so many years is what happens when agencies get too big, because you get really brilliant marketers, because it really takes the right kind of mind to come up with all of these different ideas and strategies, and let's try this something new. And then they start to get bigger, like you're saying, and then you lose the quality control because it's just what you do. And I think I always think back to that book, Good to Great, right? You have to decide how big you want to get. And for my team, I sat down with them very clearly in the beginning and said, how big do we want to get? Because really we get to decide where our ceiling is. And we decided that we had a ceiling, and we didn't want to get so busy. We have a certain number of team members we want to have, and a certain number of clients that we want to have. And we want to keep those clients to keep us innovative and creative, and also keep the quality control really high. But that wasn't, being a giant marketing agency isn't our why, you could say. So our why was creating, we're builders. And that's just who we are. We're entrepreneurs. And so we want the agency because clients are and we don't just work with attorneys, which is also really important. We work with all kinds of different industries. We have a family-owned, tree trimming and landscape business client. We have maxillofacial surgeons. We have dentists, like just the whole gambit, because different industries are doing different things that can then be applied to the competitive industries. It's very surprising what you can see, what's normal, and say custom shed building industry. And you think, how can we take this and tweak it so that it can work for our personal injury attorneys, that kind of thing. So my team are builders first and foremost. And what clients bring is problems that need answers. And so we want to be able to build technology solutions that serve our industries. And that is the other part of our business. So I would say we're about half of a marketing agency and half of a development technology company. Okay.
So one of the things that, I've had some epiphanies on recently. It was interesting. I saw you at a conference with a lot of smaller law firms, a few larger ones, but a lot of smaller law firms. I remember when I started the agency, I ended up with a client that came from like one of the legacy agencies. I'm like, wow, how could this person be coming to me? This person they were working with was really good.
Right.
And the thing that I realized is they had a legacy contract of a couple $1,000s. And I know doing the math, you can only, if you're $2,000 a month, there's only so much you could do for somebody.
Right.
So let's say I was part of the generation that people were paying $3,000 to $7,000 a month when they started out. This is giving a number of years back. And there's an amount that you can do for that.
Right.
And one of the things that I've sort of had this epiphany on, because I lost a client and I was reflecting on what was going on. And I was like, now I was that guy, my mentor, where we had a number that hadn't taken into account how much more difficult things are today. The tips and tricks you had 10 years ago you wish you could use today to move
Oh,
the
yeah.
needle, and that the brain trust you have put together isn't cheap, is high quality, and that I think the good news is in that legal, people are seeing more and more that it's not just pay an amount of money and hope to get a bunch of cases, but that given the cost and the expense on paid search has gone through the roof and TV being much less effective, that people are looking at organic and saying, yes, it's down, it's pushed far down, but if I can get an additional 10 cases from it, that has tremendous value. Whereas before it was like a commodity, I would pay X amount a month and I hope for something. And I think the hardest part has been, and just curious, because you haven't had 1.0, you're coming into this with a relatively clean slate, as far as like not an 8-10 year legacy with it. But how are you viewing the organic landscape, whether it be legal or dental or any of these? Are you seeing people more sophisticated than you would have expected as far as like they understand that it's going to take money to make money, or is this still like a black box to most of the people that you're approaching, that they just trust you and they'll run with you?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, but I do think that there's a reckoning that people are realizing when it comes to digital marketing versus television. People are realizing it's not trackable. It's very hard to know what you're getting on your return on investment. The changes that Google's made in the last 18 months with the pay-per-click is just ridiculous what they're trying to do. And so when it comes to organic, or what I like to tell my clients is that Google's an ecosystem, and it's always been an ecosystem, and you have to have a very strong website. You have to have very strong organic. And by doing that, it lifts everything up together. That's your Google My Business, leads. That's your pay-per-click conversions across the board. Local service ads, doesn't matter what you're doing. You have to have everything working together. So I do think that people, since search engines are so integrated into our lives, that the conversation for organic now, even compared to 5 years ago, is an easy conversation to have. They realize it's part of it. I have clients who are very successful in competitive spaces who refuse to do pay-per-click, but they do realize that depending on how we find, their current authority and things like that, it's a longer, burn to get to that point.
Right. And that's the piece I'm sure you like. Again, it smacked me like with a ton of bricks, and it still does that on a regular basis. The idea that, if this was really easy, we could turn a spigot on, like paid search, right? It's ridiculously expensive. Google's smarter than we are. They can get the ROI so squeezed down on people, but that in theory, organic can, if you get over that hump. And so it's interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with one of the largest legacy players. I can't call them an SEO company because they don't generally do content or links, but Scorpion is like the largest Google reseller out there for legal. And the fact that part of what I think made them as much money as it did, not that I respect their technical work by any means, but that they were early on to say, hey, paid is a huge part of this, in that it gives instant gratification. And that for many people, that's a significant piece that we want to say we set expectations. But I would think as an SEO, that is one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with, which is there is a curve it's going to take. And depending on what budget you set, that curve will differ. Just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, it's funny when you say that pay-per-click is a, instant gratification. That made me instantly think of when they launched the local service ads, right? So the local service ads, that algorithm is nonsense. I mean, I've researched, I watch, I ask, I've dug into that. From the moment it came out, I was all over that. And, early adopters, let's just keep the personal injury example into, what we're talking about here. But, the first early adopters, which were my clients, I pushed them out there as fast as I could. They were crushing it. They were crushing it.
Those early days, it was free. It was great.
Oh my gosh. I mean, some huge cases, just all. And then all of a sudden the algorithm didn't change, but like what all of a sudden they were gone. Like what is happening? And so to
be fair, the secret was out, and then everybody's in. So they're dishing out the same number of cases across the board to a certain extent.
Right. But what's the algorithm? I mean, what are the ranking factors for local service ads that puts you at the top?
Well, the thing that we have control over, right? You got budget, you max that out, then you're not different. But responsiveness seems to be the biggest differentiator that we're seeing.
Yeah, right. And I figured that out pretty fast. You have to answer every local service ad, not with ever a recording. It has to be a human being, and it has to be within 3 rings. So that responsiveness rate was very critical in the very beginning. But then
that's stuff that was not counterintuitive, right? So the client said they wanted more cases, and they insisted that they had 24-hour answering, and they didn't.
Yes.
Those people got crushed. Or a really good buddy from PubCon, he's in the moving storage space, called me and said, hey, my client's not getting any clients through their local service ads in moving storage space. And I'm like, check your responsiveness. Oh yeah, they switched cell phones. Nobody responded to a chat in the last 6 months. It's so they look, and I look at it this way: they gave lawyers a gift, and they could set the terms. The ROI from those calls is so good. If they're saying, and that if you went to any other third party pay per call service, this was a fraction of what you'd be paying anywhere else.
Oh, absolutely. But also, I do agree that in the beginning, responsiveness rate was top of the ranking factors, right? What it was: budget, responsiveness, your overall reviews, your authority, things like that. But that wasn't the case for long, because I was watching that responsiveness rate and I was hacking it the best I could with huge review rate numbers, all the things across the board, and it was still dropping off. But you know what happened? It's like, oh, if you're newer, then if you were a new LSA person, they would kind of toss you to the top, and then you would have some more stuff. So
it's so funny. It's so funny you say that. I don't know if you remember, but the company is now owned by Internet Brands Avo. Right, it was big in the legal space. It's taking on now that it's lead gen. It's not as sexy as far as the user generated content ecosystem, but similarly, if they wanted to sell you, they would push your ad to the top, almost like a crack dealer, give you some leads, then call you, say, hey, how do you like this?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And actually, I've used that same analogy, like a crack dealer, because what Google did is said, oh, all of you, and it didn't start with personal injury attorneys.
No.
It started out, it's always how Google does it too. They take this kind of like weird industry that's a little bit like, everyone feels a little bit weird about it. Locksmiths, garage people, and they're like, we're doing this for them. Yeah, okay. So sure, I'll make it look nice so everyone will swallow it and be everything's great, but then push it forward to all the other industries that they truly had in mind. So they turn on these LSA ads, they give them to attorneys. The attorneys are like, holy, what in the heck is going on? All these leads, like, this is gold. I'm paying $15 for a potentially $1 million case. And so then they were all in. All the ones who were on the fence about pay-per-click were all in, and then Google shut it off. And you know what they did? They were addicted to these leads, and they all went straight to pay-per-click.
And the cost there went through the effing roof.
And then you had Performance Max. Performance Max rolled out. That's complete trash.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Performance Max for pay-per-click.
Well, that's basically to give us, it's almost like you're going back to the old reach local yodel. Give us your money and we'll tell you what you're getting. Not quite. Yeah. But no. It's not, I don't know about you, but on our paid side, we used to say, you have a small budget, we'll take it. We now have the philosophy that if you're not willing to put 3 to 5, it's probably is 5 is a better number.
At least
that system can't even, you won't get there.
Yeah, so, you won't. Yeah.
And so, which is crazy, because you should intuitively be able to spend $1,000 on leads, get less leads in an auction. And yet,
no, I'm sorry, you can't. And I'm watching people with budgets of $100,000 a month dumping money. We have tested everything. That's my whole, that I love it.
Are you seeing certain markets where you can spend $100,000, but like if you're actually tracking, which I know is not perfect, but that the ROI is bizongo terrible, like crazy.
It is so bad. Well, and that's the thing that I love. See, I am a data geek at heart, all the way down. And so when I try something with the client, when I'm testing something, I'm not just looking at what Google Analytics or what anything says. I'm actually watching those and call tracking and listening to those phone calls and working with the client to see which ones actually turn into cases, right?
And also half the time finding out that their sausage making is this intake is,
Oh, don't even get me started.
We're not going to go there.
Don't.
Let's put that, like, we'll hold that for another day. But assuming you're taking, no, but which is not fair, because I can even for myself, like the COVID, we went all remote. It was like I had to change over of people. I moved some international, did this. I mean, again, I now have a moment of awesomeness, but I got to tell you, I judged a lot of stuff when my intake was not as awesome. And it's tough. So it's very hard to be introspective and say, you know what, did this lead service work? Well, they suck. Well, my intake wasn't also great. Which one was it? Or was it both?
Right. There is nothing that is more frustrating that I have not just clenched my teeth and listened to than a lead that you know how much money that lead cost, and listening to intake just botch it. And you're just thinking, oh my gosh, like anything is better than this. So yes, intake, its own gig. But going back to even just the quality of the leads coming in, and you say like Performance Max, great example. You look at all of you're dumping money into it. It's like, it looks so sexy in the data. Google's like, look at, you're doing all this reach. It's so cheap, blah, blah, blah. And then you go look and it's nothing. It's all trash.
You know what this reminds me of? I wonder if you had this experience too, but I remember early on when they first had like help with Google support. Now with LSAs, we actually get people, which is kind of cool. But with the non-LSAs, I remember we got somebody who was out of Boston. I was so excited that I'd risen to the level of my own person.
Yeah.
And they were so bad. This wasn't just me, it was anybody that the people they had. Because if you were any good at Google, you weren't working in support for PPC.
Yeah.
So this was like the lowest of the low. I mean, it was domestic. It was people that were educated, but like I was like ignoring it. And like, it just sucked that I had gotten to the point where I had that person and it still was like, I'm on my own.
Well, right. Or every time you called, you get a different person. If you were using like in the good old days when they were just doing the Google Maps stuff, the Google Local, there was a phone number you could absolutely call. Every time you called, it was a different answer. Every single time. No matter what. It's
also, it's like parenting, you know, you would just, if you don't like the answer, you call back again.
Right. Just ask the other parent.
No. Literally, like that would be the issue. We had an issue and, a lawyer left, you had to move a profile and somebody didn't like the answer. You just
keep calling until they give them the answer that you want. Yes. And then they would help you, but you're like, okay, thanks anyway, click, call back. We've done that. Absolutely. The good old days.
Well, look, I'm going to take us on a pivot. This is awesome.
Okay.
And I can talk, but I want to, like, you're doing something, like we get a lot of people talking straight SEO on the show, and that's awesome. Go straight paid search, but you are doing something outside the box, which I love. It seems fascinating, where you have said, hey, there's data out here and I can use this for search engines. I could use it for paid search, or I could use it to find what happened during a car accident. So tell our listener a little bit about this product, how it came to be and what it does.
So this product is called RoadProof, and what it is a very easy to use platform where you can search for the video footage of your car accident cases based on the latitude, longitude on the police report, time and date, that kind of stuff. And if there is video of your accident, you can instantly find it, click a button, watch it, and download it. And then you attach it to your case files and you use it in court or to use it to settle. It came from working with attorneys and trying to help their teams be more effective, right? You start with intake and you're like, what are you guys doing? And you kind of snowballs from there. And we had one guy in a firm that was spending his entire career, like his whole life, was just subpoenaing footage all the time. And I was like, tell me about this. And so then I figured out, I was like, I think we could fix this problem. And that's kind of how it was born. And it's been really fun because nobody else was really crazy enough to do it because it was a big undertaking. And, but yeah, it's becoming very successful. And it's
great. I see it popping up, people using it on websites to sort of advertise, to bring people in, find your accidents, things like that. Really, really great stuff. And so again, we'll put links to these for people who want to learn more about it, because I think it's fascinating. I know I told you when I met you, I was sideswiped on a hit and run, and it was frustrating. In my case, the quality was not good enough. I was trying to find the person as opposed to know who was at fault. I was trying to find the person, but it really shows you that, Big Brother may be watching, but it's not always watching well. And I think one of the things that your service is going to point out is looking at it not retrospectively, but what is out there, and if we're going to have Big Brother watching, we might as well have something that is more useful. So I hope that not only is this good for making plaintiffs successful and proving their case, but I hope that it furthers and allows people to think more about how we should be using these cameras, hopefully for good, because just having them themselves is one thing, but having them in the most I mean, you probably have now data that would show at this resolution versus these placements, all of these things would be significant differentiators compared to what a municipality thinks is like best practices.
Right. And so, I mean, this is all publicly available data. And really the passion behind the whole thing is we wanted to take, nobody is databasing this data. It's just it's because it's very expensive. It's very time consuming. It's a very big job to database this data. And so these municipalities are keeping it for a very short period of time and deleting it. But really, it's about having the truth about what happened, right? Once you've car accidents, absolutely, that's huge. If you've ever been in a major car accident, I have, you don't know what happened. You think you know what happened, but it happened to you. And so you're just like, I don't know.
And witnesses around you.
Because it's all happening so fast.
Like I give you, we had a non-personal injury auto accident where somebody cut my wife off, and the stories given to the police were so backwards that something as simple as this now, would have been incredibly valuable to have.
Yes, and so instead of this, it's really just taking away the gray and doing black and white. And we want to be able to offer this to the public. We have a lot of different opportunities right now that we're in discussions about to do with this data besides what we're doing with it right now. And it is 100% something that, like you said, we've got all these cameras, but it's the public able to use them in the ways that they should be used, because that's all publicly, available information because of the Freedom of Information Act. That should be ours to have.
And what I love about what you're doing is the Freedom of Information Act is great, but it's 6 months and a bunch of paperwork and a hope. Right. The idea that stuff turns into real time is just genius. So Kristi, this is fascinating. Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you, and thank you for spending time here with us today. I hope to see you at another either Internet Geek conference or legal marketing conference in the near future. But this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
You can count on it, and thank you for having me. I'm a big fan.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to the SEO Insider with Seth Price. Be sure to check back next week for fresh insights into building your brand's online presence. Episodes are available to stream directly on BluShark Digital's website.